Welcome to Power Talks with Santosha. Today we have with us Mr. Sujit Mundul, the CEO and Director of Standard Chartered Bank, Nepal. Although the global economic crisis is being discussed worldwide by universities, media and business houses, the global economic crisis is still an issue that needs further discussion. Mr. Mundul, during the first season of Power Talks, we have discussed this economic crisis extensively. Yet we would like to hear from you the inside story behind this global meltdown.
The global meltdown and the crisis has been well talked about for the last quite a few months. We have seen how the hypes in the economies, particularly in the Western economies, can go up to a level which is unmeasurable, forgetting that there is an economic cycle. And things were all hunky-dory, the stock exchanges were doing great, all scripts were doing great. People totally became oblivious that there could be a downturn. And I believe, and what has been proved by many researchers and many statistics coming out from governments, from banks, from institutions, clearly show that there was lack of supervision at the governmental level, at the regulators level, and also bad lending, like subprime is a case in point. And it's sheer greed which had forced the large economies like US and other Western economies, who virtually control the whole global economy to a great extent, And so this meltdown has happened. So the basis of this meltdown, this crisis and subsequent recession, if you go into the deeper analysis, you will see that there was a hype initially, there was lack of control at the governmental level, and there was bad lending. So to my mind, these are the root causes of this global meltdown, particularly in the Western economies, and US in particular.
In November, the US elections result was announced where Obama was a clear victor. Has that anyway in a connection with the economic crisis?
Well, it has to some extent influenced, and people had a lot of expectation, very naturally, that the change in guard, there will be changes, but people's expectation that things will happen overnight, which does not happen. So Mr. Obama has got a very difficult job to steer the American economy out of this problem, this deep recession. And I think his team is now grossly engaged in getting over this crisis, which I think will happen, but over a period of time.
You have your branches worldwide. How is your bank coping up with this situation?
Although we are a British bank, headquartered in London, but we are Asia-focused bank, basically. Our vision, basically, our strategic mission is like this, that we want to be a leading international bank in Asia, Africa and the Middle East. So our focus is Asia, Africa and the Middle East. Fortunately, these economies, they had gone through this kind of, particularly the Asian economies have gone through Asian crisis in 1997. And these economies had got a very big learning out of this crisis. So they were better monitored, they were better governed. And so the economic fallout was not as severe as West has witnessed, So that way, I think, Asian economies have done reasonably better than the Western economies. But there are dependencies, like Korea or Taiwan and all that, they are hugely, even China, hugely export-oriented economies. But I think the domestic demand is also good. So bank has, its bank's policy, bank strategy, which helped, and our very conservative lending policy. We have not gone in for this kind of commercial papers, those kind of papers, which other banks have encouraged, their, funding of those papers. We have not done that. We remain very, very, strong in our lending, very conservative in our lending, managed our portfolio very well. So in most of the countries we have done very well, and we have mostly steered our bank through the crisis very well. But yet the crisis is not yet over, so we need to remain very vigilant, and we need to actually play a cautious role. We need to look at the economies with cautious optimism.
All the South Asian nations hold great economic prospects. How can we explore the possibilities of South Asian cooperation in terms of economy and business?
I think your question is a good question, but I would like to say that there is an established institution which is called SAARC, and SAARC has got the responsibility to do a clear coordination in terms of the economic development of the South Asian countries. And I think SAARC is headquartered here in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and a very senior person is heading as Secretary General of SAARC.
Dr. Silkant Sharma.
Yes, Dr. Sharma. And I think SAARC is doing its job, but it also depends on individual participant countries, to contribute to the understanding and propagating the mutual interests in a very conducive way. And it needs political will. I don't want to elaborate on that, but a political will is very important. Coordination is very important. We need to understand that today, in the age of globalization, we cannot remain isolated. The economies cannot remain isolated, because most of the member countries in SAARC, we are all poor countries. We are developing countries, and with economic cooperation with each other, would definitely help us growing. And there will be mutual growth. There will be mutual understanding. There are a lot of trade opportunities, and there will be far more opportunities being created with this cooperation. I think governments, respective governments, are fully aware of it, but I think political will is very important. Quick change in governments also might delay the whole process.
Indian Congress won the elections consecutively this year. Does this contribute to the stability and economic growth of India?
I think so, because why they have won, there are a lot of political analyses had happened over the last few weeks, and it came out loud and clear that UPA government had done a good job, and that is why they got the mandate back. So it has now posed an additional responsibility on the incumbent government today to ensure that the economic growth continues, and I think that would be great if it happens, because there will be a contagion, positive effect on the neighboring economies, Nepal included. So I'm quite hopeful that it would not only help India, it would help neighboring countries, including Nepal.
Ministry of External Affairs in India is discussing its neighboring policies right now.
Yes.
Will this also contribute to the regional economic growth as well?
This should form the part of the economic cooperation, because all that we discussed is the economic cooperation and mutual interests. So I think it should, yes.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break.
Sure, thank you.
Do stay with us.